Well, hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Williams, Senior Editor at MGMA and host of the MGMA Podcast Network. Today, we are continuing our coverage of the upcoming MGMA Leaders Conference. It's September 28th through October 1st in Orlando. And today, we are so blessed to have one of our keynote speakers, Crystal Washington, who is joining us today. Crystal, I've been reading about. Crystal is a futurist, an author, a Hall of Fame speaker. That's kind of cool. And she's going to be talking to us about generative AI and other issues like that. Crystal, it's so good to get to connect with you today.
I am so honored to get to spend some time with you and the audience as well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I have to ask you before we get rolling, are you an Orlando person, a Disney kind of person? Do you like things like that? Or do you...
I have a Disney addiction. If I could move in, I would. In fact, I'm one of the few adults I know who have gone to Disneyland and a couple parks in Disney World, even by myself. So I don't have to have a child. I don't have to have another person. I will go by myself and even get on the kiddie rides with little kids. So I'm there with like 4-year-olds. It's a small world. Yay.
That is so cool. Well, I don't know if you've carved out any time. I know you have a busy schedule. If you plan to hit Disney or anything else while you're there, anything, or are you just flying in, flying out? What are you going to do?
We kind of have to wait until we get closer. I get in trouble if I start making fun, grandiose plans before I get close. My team gets on me. So sometimes other things are planned. But I hope, Daniel, that I get a chance to. And hopefully some of the attendees will be right there with me. We'll be small whirling it together.
Okay, well, that is so cool. And you can ride the rides for me. I have a now 20-year-old who got me to do a few rides about a decade ago. And I got off of one of those things that had me moving sideways and upside down. And I went, that's it. That's the last one. So I know my limits, and I will leave that to you, Crystal, and my daughter and other people who like really fast rides that disorient. So, let's talk about you a little bit. I gave some background of you being an author, a Hall of Fame speaker, a futurist. How did you get involved in being a future? How does someone become a futurist? Someone who looks into like what's going on with technology, trends, things of that nature.
It's interesting because I was a futurist before I knew I was a futurist. It actually took one of the more founding futurists in the United States from like the 70s to see me and was like, you do know you're a futurist. I'm like, what? And then I went through training. Basically, it falls into how I think.
Okay.
I was a baby that did puzzles, and I have a way of just looking a few steps ahead. But basically, I guess the part of the story that might be interesting and that led to this is that my degree is in hospitality because they offered me a free ride. And so when I was in that industry, I started to see what was going to happen ahead of time. And I was very young. I was in my early 20s over a department of people old enough to be my parents and grandparents. And I remember telling my boss, I have a feeling, and this is in the 2000s, this social media thing's going to be big. I said, I just feel like it's a matter of time before companies get on here. Now, of course, now we're like, duh, but it hadn't happened yet. And I said, think about it. If Pepsi gets on there and they have a profile, Pepsi can talk to people who love Pepsi, and they'll love Pepsi more. And my boss, who's a few generations past me, said, look, kid, you're cute and you make us a bleep load of money. He didn't say bleep. Stick to what you know. And I was like, oh, burns. And so I did what any self-respecting millennial would do. I quit my job and I started a company. And so it was all around leveraging social media to grow small business. I started with mom and pops in the Houston area. And then within about a year and a half, I had Google, Microsoft, and British Airways hiring me as a consultant. So I've always had a way of seeing what was coming ahead of time, especially with technology. And when you're a futurist, you actually go through training for this, degrees. So there's more to it, right? It's going back to school and everything. But it's a way of seeing the world where you see alternative futures that are likely to happen by collecting data points, recognizing not just trends, but something called signals, Daniel. Those are things that we've all seen before. We know how we see those little things and we're like, this keeps popping up. I don't know what it means, but it means something.
Yeah.
Knowing how to analyze that and turn that into data, that's really what futurists do. And we help individuals or organizations prepare for those very likely alternative futures and even get ahead of them to try to bring about the future they want. There's things that we can do that oftentimes in normal strategic planning doesn't happen. So
Okay.
that was my course to being a futurist. It started off with my business and then the speaking, and a futurist being like, wait a minute. And she pulled me aside and told me to go through all this extra training. So now I just have models that really match how I naturally think. I'm always thinking several steps ahead.
Yeah, and it's really interesting you explaining that you really started out in hospitality. I don't know how many futurists combine those two elements of life. I think that is so cool. Um, were you not not like you saw the future, but the pandemic obviously really rocked us on a global
Mhm.
level. Um, and just so much is changing so fast. So we have the pandemic, then we have AI's been around for decades, but to consumers like me and many of our listeners, AI, quite possibly the way we interact with AI right now with
Mhm.
ChatGPT and other platforms out there, that has just exploded in these last several years. So, what would you say about what's going on just from that everyday use of AI? And then we'll get into the healthcare side of it.
Well, I think it's important to ground ourselves in the fact that the term artificial intelligence was invented in the 1950s.
Okay.
We have been using artificial intelligence for anyone that's alive right now. They've actually been using it for almost their entire life, unless they're over 100 years old.
Right.
Um, and so, any type of technology that performs a reasoning function that used to require the human brain, so even a regular calculator from the 70s, is technically artificial intelligence.
Wow.
So we have to understand that it's not this new scary thing. Now, it did increase dramatically starting to get into the 2000s, especially in the medical field, or when
Hmm.
it came to actuaries for insurance, analyzing data, scanning. We know that it's oftentimes more reliable than humans when it comes to recognizing irregularities in medical scans. But the reason why everyone's talking about it now and it seems overwhelming, because even then, when that was happening in the medical field and it was growing tremendously, even in 2020, I actually did a 9-month IBM data science certificate to better understand it, especially from a medical perspective. Now, I have no
Hmm.
interest in being a data scientist. I see what's coming and I like to study it ahead of time, right?
Right.
It was really the invention of, or the not invention, it was the introduction of generative AI to the public in November of 2022, which really blew the cap off
Right.
because this was a form of AI that generated human like responses that
Hmm.
seemed like it could analyze things. It seemed like it could draw and make videos and do summaries. We hadn't seen that before. And of course, when you understand what it is, you know that it's not an oracle. It's actually just advanced math and pattern recognition.
Okay.
But the speed with which it's increasing is dramatic, but it's not as dramatic as people think. Um, what's happening is we're listening to the people who are creating it, who are saying it's going to be able to do this, 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 and this. And we're looking at them as experts when they're really salespeople. Does that make
Hmm.
sense? And
Yeah.
so what
Yeah.
happens is you buy into the hype of a thing. I'm not saying that it's not important, but what it does is it creates this anxiety in people. And if you look at some of the Elon Musk's of the world, or you look at, our folks over at Meta, right? Oftentimes the things that they say do not come to pass in the timeline they say at all, period. What Meta was supposed to be capable of is not what it's doing right now. Anybody remember the metaverse? People were spending
Yeah.
hundreds of
Yeah.
thousands of dollars to buy real estate in an invisible world, right? So I say that because I think we should take it seriously, Daniel. But I also think that we have to understand it's not moving as fast as they say it is. It is not as accurate as some are portraying it to be. It is not human level intelligence. And we have to be super careful that we're listening more to the engineers versus the faces of organizations that stand to benefit from people buying into whatever they're saying because it helps their stock prices go up. It gives them additional opportunities and investors. We have to weigh it.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, wow. Okay. I was telling you offline that healthcare leaders, those are who our MGMA podcast listeners are, they're juggling everything from staffing to compliance to efficiency to, just the complexity of the healthcare world, trying to keep their practices profitable or bringing in as much money as they can while providing the care that's needed for their patients. They don't have the time like maybe you do to be an expert in AI. How do they embrace it without being overwhelmed by it? What can they do as healthcare leaders?
I mean, I do think we have to set aside time for learning, period.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand, when we talk about leaders in the medical field, my gosh, from staffing shortages to challenges in getting certain supplies right now in global supply chains. I know there's not a whole lot of extra time. So I just want to say that the next thing I say is going to come from someone who strongly both appreciates and empathizes with the situation. But even if it's just setting aside 10, 15 minutes to it could be just looking at what's coming out for your industry. It could be reading something like TLDR. That's too long, didn't read. It's a blog that comes out daily, and you don't have to read it daily, but just kind of look and see, and you can do a search for medical to see if it mentions any type of AI that's going to impact the medical industry. I think we just have to be open to see. What I do try to discourage people from, and I think maybe the folks listening to us right now will appreciate this, Daniel, is that I tell people the goal is not to be an early adopter or first adopter of any of this technology. Being the first with these types of technologies is extremely painful because there's a lot of hiccups. There's a lot of potential legal issues. There's a lot of potential PR issues if you don't do this right. And I am someone who's sometimes hired to come into corporations as they walk back access to generative AI from their people because they've seen how it's blown up in their faces. And so I think it's a matter of being open, but also really being clear about what are the top 3 challenges in your practice or your organization right now. And then if you hear of any type of generative AI or any other type of technology that addresses those specific challenges, then spend some time looking into it. What's happening right now is we live in this very interesting world where leaders of all kinds of industries are doing the opposite. They see a new technology, it's shiny. Ooh, let me figure out how I could use this. That is backwards. That's not a good use of your time. If you identify your challenges, then if you see the technology, let me see if this helps with one of those 3 things, because that's a quick lookup. Nope. Okay, I keep moving, because there's a lot of wonderful technology that might actually add value, but it may not add value to you, your practice, your organization, your career, your patients.
Okay. Now, I know you are tight on time. You've got other appointments today, but I want if you could leave our listeners with one thing. You're going to be speaking in Orlando on generative AI for leaders. What's something fun? What's something exciting that you could share with them that they can expect to learn or hear or listen to in that keynote?
Well, I think really one of the biggest things you're going to get out of this is, yes, we're going to talk about the applications for the medical industry, but you're going to leave with some very practical and even funny ways that you can use some of this stuff in your everyday life that's not intrusive, but that's actually helpful. So just, for anyone that feels overwhelmed, which is most people right now, right?
Yeah.
I don't want you to come feeling like you're going to have all this stuff downloaded into you and it's going to be overwhelming. It's not. We're going to make this practical. We're going to make it fun. And really, just like in the medical field, some things really aren't as complicated as people make them out to be. It's just having a basic understanding. And we're going to strip this down so it's as pragmatic as possible and fun. You're going to see it's interactive too. It's fun.
All right. Well, Crystal Washington, keynote speaker, author, futurist, thanks for joining us on the MGMA podcast.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
All right, everyone. Crystal will be speaking at our Leaders Conference on generative AI for leaders, staying ahead in a machine-driven world. Again, that conference is in Orlando, September 28th through October 1st. You can go to mgma.com/leaders right now and register or learn more about it. Thank you so much for being MGMA podcast listeners.